Step 2, unlearn what you were taught. I'm going to be super blunt right now and tell you that much of what your doctor will tell you about childbirth is bullshit. In fact, most medical professionals have never witnessed a true physiological birth and wouldn't know how to support one. That's why it's important that you learn what you need so that you can train them. I know, it's radical, isn't it? Imagine teaching your doctor who went to medical school for years on how to support you in your birth. The audacity for you, a first-time mom, to think that you know better than they do. But here's the thing. You actually do know more than they do. You're the only one birthing this baby. The problem with maternity care is that it is based off of the idea that you somehow can't birth without their help. They will even go so far as to say, don't push until the doctor gets here. Now, think about this logically for a minute here. How do they know it's not time for you to push? If your body is actively signaling for you to do it, then doesn't that mean it's time? If you say the baby is coming and they brush you off and tell you that's impossible because they just checked you an hour ago and you were barely 4 centimeters dilated, then who is right? Well, typically what happens is that you end up birthing your baby and the nurses are shocked and freaking out because the doctor hasn't even arrived yet. This is how a mom can be sent home multiple times from the hospital, being told her contractions aren't strong enough yet, only to return a third time and give birth in the lobby. This is also how a mother can say something is wrong and the doctor dismisses her concerns, only to have a tragedy happen. The other side of this coin is when you instinctively know that nothing is wrong, but your doctor insists you need to induce or otherwise change your birth plans, only to find out that everything was actually fine and you just went through the pain of an induction and a cesarean for nothing. So how do you avoid this? It starts with recognizing that you cannot go with the flow, and you cannot take everything your doctor or anyone else with more experience than you tells you at face value. In fact, even if you're following me on social media channels, I don't want you to just take my word for anything either. Two people can get the exact same information and make entirely different choices. And part of the reason I cite so many different sources and bring in multiple perspectives into my teaching is because I want you to know where you can get more of that information. It's no secret that I love to learn. I am constantly reading and taking classes, and then I apply the tools I pick up and use them in my coaching as well as in my life. I also don't take anything at face value, though. Instead, I take whatever I'm learning and I dissect it, challenge it, look for other sources to back it up, apply it to multiple scenarios, and only then do I decide whether it's going to work for me or not. In fact, I didn't fully trust my own system I developed until I took it outside of my own experience and tested it multiple times with multiple women and applied it to their own unique challenges and situations. I also applied the system in other areas of my life to see if it would work outside of birth. Even then, I didn't fully trust it until after I started coaching my clients at a deeper level and walked them through the process. And I learned as much from them as they did from me. To develop any system and have it actually work are two different things. To simply read something in a book versus also taking the knowledge to apply in your own life are also two different things. You not only need to know what to think, but you also need to know how to think. The problem is that you might not have been taught how to learn things the right way, especially if you had a very traditional education. I'm going to share something with you. The original purpose of public education for all children was not to create intelligent beings, but instead, it was meant to serve the industrial age. The system wanted kids to be able to fit into the box. This is why, instead of questioning the context and psychological complexities of wars and other historical events, you memorized dates. It's why, as one of my high school teachers pointed out so eloquently, you aren't actually graded on what you think, but on whatever you can regurgitate about the lesson that the teacher told you. It's more, what do you think I want you to think, and far less think for yourself. Why does this matter in the context of birth? Because your care provider was also taught what to think. As soon as you go into your first appointment, you will notice that things are done as a matter of routine and no one questions it. If you ask your care provider why something is being done, their typical answer will be that it's standard of care. They might also tell you that they're trying to avoid a bad outcome or that a study was done. But that's as far as the conversation will go. This is why I spend a great deal of time discussing with my clients all the possible tests and exams that they could be offered, and we talk about how they feel about them. We talk about what certain results of those tests could mean and explore the possibilities of not doing the tests versus choosing to do them. For example, Jenny wrote out several pages of possible options as she planned her pregnancy. She didn't just decide whether or not she was open to doing a certain test. She also looked at the research, and then, once she had enough information, she brought the discussion to her doctor. Having the right education means knowing that you can look up anything you want to know. Rather than asking the doctor what they think you should do, you're instead coming to them to discuss the actual possibilities of doing the test versus not doing it, and getting clarification on what you've read. This isn't as hard as you have been led to believe. The medical journals are all out there on the internet, and anyone can read them. All it takes is a willingness to look up and learn new words and understand how research works. That's something that cannot be covered in this book alone. However, if you want a great summary of how research is done and the limitations, I recommend you check out Why Induction Matters by Rachel Reed, as this book has a succinct chapter devoted to understanding research and evidence in maternity care practices. For now, let's focus on the questions you'll need to start asking yourself. So if you are curious though, Why Induction Matters just looks like this. And this is an excellent little book. I love this for understanding the benefits and risks of induction. And she does go deeper into research and why research alone does not help you in determining whether or not you want to have an induction. But you can apply this to any medical procedure or test or intervention. This is basically the framework for that. So now we're going to go into the journal exercises. And as I reminded you before, if you don't take action on this, then all you've got is information, but you're not taking the implementation. And the trick, the key to actually getting what you want out of life and out of your birth experience is to implement what you are learning. Okay? So there is a list of these same questions. You go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/extras and you can get the whole list. And I really highly recommend that you do these exercises, because when you know where to go with your planning of your education, you can sift through all of the mess and all of the bombardment of information and the overwhelm. You get very clear on what you want by doing this. Otherwise, you're just going to be going in an information loop and you're not going to know what to focus on. And you're going to possibly fall into one of those natural birth traps that leads to the induction, the cesarean, or you otherwise are just paralyzed in fear because you're just in information overload. All right, so let's get started with journal exercises 1.2. Take out your notebook again and look at all of those fears and stories that you wrote down. Now, you've got your list. Ask these questions. Number 1, what is confusing you about this story or information that you're receiving? Number 2, what do you need to know more about or understand in order to better grasp what happened? Number 3, Where could you find this information? Number 4, has anyone had a similar experience with a different outcome? And if so, what is it that they did differently? Number 5, what is the intention of the writer or teller in sharing this story or information? Number 6, how does this actually apply to you based on your circumstances and beliefs? Number 7, how many sources lead back to the same information and how different are those sources? If you're just getting information from OBs and you're not looking at anything from midwives or independent childbirth educators or doulas, you're going to get the same information. It's still biased. You need to have wisdom from multiple perspectives and multiple values to be able to clearly see it. All right. So these are just some of the questions you will want to ask as you continue to absorb new information. Remember the golden rule. Stay curious. Never take anything at face value. And as you do your research, continue to question what you are reading. Remember that wisdom comes from multiple perspectives. So just because one medical professional says something doesn't mean that it's 100% truthful. You need to be able and willing to seek out other sources that can back up what is being said or disprove it. The best way to do this is to argue both sides of the same issue. It will minimize bias and allow you to see the whole picture. And then once you do that, you can then bring in your own perspective, thoughts, feelings, and values. Once you have practiced thinking in this new way, you will also find that you don't scare easily anymore. Your doctor could say, your baby is getting too big, we have to induce. And rather than panic, you'll be able to ask for some time to think about it, go do some research, and explore your own feelings and come to the decision that feels best for you. Speaking of what's best for you, it's time to move on to the next pillar, which is about choosing the right environment.